And we're live from the basement of the Star of Kings in King's Cross.
Hey! Live from London.
Yeah, live from London.
Live from London.
I am Ian Waits.
Ian, you're looking particularly lovely this evening.
Oh, thank you very much. I had a particularly relaxing Easter con and decided to put on a dress. And this is what I look like when I wear a dress. So if you were expecting Ian Waits, whoa, there's my side up. Well, if you're expecting Ian Waits, I'm afraid he's been taken poorly, and so I, Donna, have stepped into the breach, and we are interviewing today Una McCormack. Everybody.
Una McCormack.
Already a mistake. He would never have made this mistake.
He would have made it twice.
Did he?
He wouldn't.
Oh, not twice, not twice. Will I?
See how we go.
Oh no. Okay, so Una McCormack. Or Dr. Una McCormack.
Dr. Una McCormack.
Yes. Okay, so very, very welcome to the BSFA evening.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
You've done. We're mostly known for your novels that are to do with tie-in novels to do with Star Trek, Deep Space Nine,
yeah.
Discovery, and all those. So, and Doctor Who as well.
Oh yes, lots of Doctor Who.
Yeah. I noticed that you had a really very excellent, says the crowd.
Blake 7, the crowd said. I always hear it.
Yeah, the stage is deaf. Oh, I'm deaf. But apparently, a Blake 7 and Excellence look the same from here. But they are.
They are indeed.
And you have also done some audio dramas for Big Finish.
I have done a lot of audio dramas for Big Finish again, mostly Doctor Who, or the sort of spin-off series that they have, and indeed lots of Blake 7s, so lots of bits and pieces for Big Finish. They have a huge range of sort of spin-offs from Doctor Who, and I've done several of those, so particularly with a character called Bernice Summerfield, who is, she's a brilliant art. She's the sort of River Song before River Song. She's an archaeologist who hangs around with the Doctor. She's brilliantly performed by Lisa Barman, and I've got to do lots of those with one of my very favourite people, Mr. James Goss, a very talented science fiction writer who you should all read. So yes, lots of fun.
Okay, so how did you get into sort of writing these tie-in novels then?
A man emailed and asked me if I would like to write a Star Trek novel.
It was as simple as that?
It really was as simple as that. So I was very quietly minding my own business. I was not doing my PhD, as many people do when they're doing a PhD. I was busy writing Star Trek fan fiction and posting that on the internet. Deep Space Nine fan fiction on the internet was this sort of new thing that we were all very excited about. People were being very, back in the late 90s. And I got an email out of the blue from a guy saying, "Hello, my name is Marco. I'm the editor of the book range, Star Trek book range. People have said nice things about your fiction. Would you like to pitch a story?" And the nice thing about email is that, of course, the person who sent you the email can't see you running around the room punching the air. So I got to, yes, that would be extremely nice. And I pitched my first novel and did a couple of things around that. So, and the most important thing about this story, when I tell this story, my friend Jim Swallow, who's also a Star Trek writer and a really good thriller writer as well, he says the most important thing about this story is this never ever happened. So, right, this never happened, and my entire career has kind of come from that. And I have mates who've been writing TV tie novels for years, and they hate my guts because I've done a Star Trek novel that's extremely difficult to break into. So yeah, a man emailed and asked would I like a book contract, and I said yes.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So where was the fan fiction that you started with? Where were you writing that?
So years. Well, my very first was a Blake 7 Stickman cartoon. Woo! At the age of 8, or maybe a bit younger. And then I was writing little Blake 7 stories, and they were in proper print scenes. They were in fan scenes. My first ones were in little, folded over and mimeographed and hand cranked and lettered by monks in monasteries and things. That kind of fanzine. And then did lots of Blake 7 stuff in fanzines, a little bit online. But then when I got into Deep Space Nine in the late 90s, and it was just as sort of Usenet was turning into kind of Google groups. It was still on little. There was a rec.arts.startrek.creative or something, and you would post stories there, and that's where I was posting them, and people were going, "That's very nice, I like that." And then as I say, a man found me and sent me an email and gave me a book contract.
So, really, then you were quite young when you started these like.
I'm practically in my nappies. Well, Blake Seven stories. I mean, I was watching Blake Seven on television when I was about 8 or 9 or 10. You know, going to sleep, making up stories about it, and then got into fandom, Blake Seven fandom when I was about 18 or 19. So, well, you didn't know, early 90s. Yeah. So yeah, pretty young. Yeah. Oh, and weirdly, I had my first sale was to Doctor Who magazine. I had a short story in Doctor Who magazine when I was about 19. So, and then I didn't do any Doctor Who for years and years and years after that. But that was my first professional sale. It was a little short story a long time ago. Yeah.
So you started with Blake Seven, and then it was Deep Space Nine.
Yes, yeah.
So yeah, was it that you were invited to sort of like take part in that sort of like universe?
Yeah, what was happening at the time was, because this was about, I think there was an anniversary coming up. I think, oh God help me, it might have been something like the 10th anniversary, and there was a special collection of a special anthology. I got commissioned for a short story for that. But at the time, the Deep Space Nine regiment, the show was off the air, but it was still recent enough that you could kind of there was sufficient interest that you could do sort of the season that was coming next. What would have happened after the show had gone off like season 8. Although I know Mark didn't like talking about it later. But there were books that directly followed on from the show. So you were kind of taking part in that, growing that storyline. And Trek at the time was a bit sort of, well, Voyager was coming to an end. I think Voyager had ended, Enterprise was ending, so it was just in that odd period when there wasn't really anything happening. I mean, right now there's just so much. We've got Discovery happening, there's loads of stuff happening, stuff was being announced every day. But back then it was just, I think, the very end of Enterprise, the new movies hadn't even arrived, so the Chris Pine ones. So, and that's always a really good time for tie-in fiction. It's the same with Doctor Who. In between Doctor Who ending in '89 and coming back in whenever it was 2005, there's all these incredible books, really, really fantastic books where people like Paul Cornell get their starts, and they sort of do the groundwork for what's going to be the new show. So it was a really good time for TV tie-in writers who were interested in doing Trek. So I had a field day. I got to write pretty much what I liked because you weren't bound by what the show was doing in ways that you can be if a property's live.
So you're able to take that canon and basically fire it.
Yeah, exactly that. I was kind of, do whatever I liked. So, and the good thing about fandoms like Doctor Who, particularly with Star Trek now is that obviously it's a massively complex on-screen stuff. There's some massively complex kind of book range, and there are some wonderful, wonderful people who document all this on extremely well-kept wiki sites. So whenever I'm stuck, it's like, somebody's done all the hard work of joining all the gaps for me. So yeah, it's all all really good fun. Yeah.
I think I've got some questions for some of them. Yeah, which we'll get to. Your first published non-franchise story, Sea Change, hadn't been selected by Gardner. Doesn't. I never know how to pronounce anybody's names. For the year's best anthology in 2008.
That was my. I think that was my second published short story. I think I had a nice run at, because I find short fiction extremely difficult, and I don't write much of it. And usually, what happens is Ian Wade says, "I have an anthology. Do you have a short story?" And then I spent kind of like 6 months sweating over a handful of words. And I said, "Sorry, Ian, it's coming at about 1,000 words," and he kind of sighs. So all right then. So I find it, short stories are so hard. They're so much harder than novels. They're just really hard work, and then they come out short. So they're really frustrating. But yes, I had a sort of lucky run here. That one got featured, and I think a couple of others, my early ones, got kind of named, and they have a kind of special honourable mention at the back. So I had quite a good run for the first handful. But short fiction's so hard. I just find it really, really tricky.
So it's a pain for you.
Yeah, and it takes something. They don't pay money either, is it?
A little bit in there.
A little bit.
I thought this was like one of your short stories that I selected in the end.
You did,
for Best of British Science Fiction.
You did, yeah. Yes. That one got a BSFA shortlisting as well.
Oh yeah. Oh, all the plaudits.
I know. Well, not quite. Only a shortlisting. Nearly all the plaudits. Yeah. Yes, of course.
It's good. It's still very good.
They're very hard. I find them very hard. So maybe, I don't know, it's nice to think that the effort pays off.
Great. Right, so I've also got here that you've also got 2 novels for the Weird Space series from Abaddon. So, yeah, that's Dave Thomas Moore, isn't it?
It is indeed, yeah. That was thanks to my very good friend Eric Brown. There were a bunch of us who lived around Cambridge at one point. We all met in a pub called the Pickerel, and Eric was sort of living in the area at the time. He's moved away now. So Eric was doing this series, and it's Lovecraft in space. It's really good fun. It's kind of space opera, and then it's kind of really sort of squishy eldritch monsters wreaking havoc, and it's all very good fun. He did 2 novels and kind of set up this universe, the Weird Space universe, and then I think they were looking for sort of people to take up the setting and run with it, and he suggested me to Abaddon, and they were just brilliant fun. And Eric was fantastic because I would email him saying, I've got this idea, but it would break your universe in certain ways. And he was going, just go for it. I hadn't thought of that, but give it a go, see what happens. So he was incredibly generous because, if you've set something up like that, I can imagine somebody coming in and going, it's kind of breaking it with hammers could be really annoying. But he just went to go for it, do what you need for the story. So it was great, yeah. I do that kind of feminist space opera with Lovecraft, and pregnant heroines and female whiskey priests and that kind of thing. So I'm very fond of them. I had a lot of fun with them. I love shows like Firefly and Blake Seven that kind of have like ensemble crews, and I kind of did that in those books. So it was good fun.
They have a great character exploration, don't they?
Yeah, exactly that. And a sort of little gang of people who are kind of simultaneously deeply reliant on each other, but really wind each other up, which is what I like.
I suppose the tie-in novels that you've been working on, that sort of like you have the right discipline then to someone come work in somebody else's fictional world, so that is not TV derived.
It's fine. And the trick with, I think, like I was saying, things like Star Trek, where the universe has got really complex, even in the books, you're kind of going, well, let's find a little space where I can write, where I don't make a mess of other things, but I've got kind of scope to invent stuff myself. It must be like writing historical fiction or something. Where can I write in a little niche where I don't kind of violate established canon of history and do stuff instead? Yeah.
All I know from friends of mine who've pitched and failed to big finish. All they know is that when they tend to do open writing, it seems to be like you can take a doctor, and then you can take an assistant who's not any of these assistants, and then you must introduce a monster who's not any of the monsters, and then there's you have to be really, really specific like that. And it's really, really hard.
A lot of that is to do with licensing, of course, is that they will have licensed specific things that are owned by the BBC. But for example, a companion who's created in a script is the copyright of that script writer. So if you want to use this character, they have to license it through the creator and not just through the BBC. So it's tremendously complicated. And they have certain things licensed. So the Daleks, for example, are notoriously, the copyright is extremely policed and looked after. It's not owned by the BBC, it's owned by the Estate of Terry Nation. Yes, like Blake Seven. So there are all sorts of complications. So the Blake Seven stuff tends not to involve Scorpio and season 4 because that's got more complicated copyright surrounding it as well. So you're fitting it into all these sort of not just imaginative gaps, but also the kind of legalistic gaps. But I just take that they say to me, write that with these people, and I go, yes, sir, I don't worry about that. So that's no problem. Yeah.
That's all good. So Termination doesn't mind you actually owning the Dalek yourself then. I've heard you've got a Dalek.
Terry Nation has been dead about 15 years, so but I'm not sure that would stop his estate. Yeah, we do. We have a life-size Dalek at home that takes up most of the flat. So we live in a 2-bedroom flat, and most of it is filled with a massive.
I love that
thing.
Does it have a practical purpose?
No, it collects dust.
Because we thought about making one into a cocktail cabinet.
It freaks out people who come to fix the lights and stuff. They kind of walk in and go, holy hell, it's a Dalek. So, but mostly these things collect dust. They're not very interactive.
Do you not have it rigged up with any voices? No.
No, we could do, but we're very lazy. We've had it nearly 15 years, and we've never got round to doing that at all. So it's not going to. I was in America, and I this is about 15 years ago, and I got finally got a line over to my other half, rang him up. Hello, how are you? Yeah, fine. Bought a Dalek. How's the trip going? Oh, back up, Tiger. But I didn't mind, so it's fine. It's quite funny. It's great seeing people's faces when they walk in. They're not expecting it. So.
Did you talk to it?
No.
That's a yes.
No. It's very tame. It's very domesticated in many ways. But right at the moment, it's kind of covered in my kids' sort of arts and crafts and stuff. So it's not a very dignified darling.
Just imagine it with like some
It's got loads of sort of tints. So we made some little rockets out of toilet roll and wrapping paper. Toilet roll holders, wrapping paper.
Do you Christmasify it?
Oh yeah, sure. Oh. How could you not? If you have a Dalek in your house, how could you not Christmasify it? Obviously, it gets covered in tinsel and fairy lights and stuff. So little baubles.
Brilliant. Okay. Oh, I heard you mention the pickerel group. Eric and pickerel.
Oh yes.
So are you part of the pickerel group then?
Yes. Yeah.
I have heard of the pickerel group. I'm part of a writing group, Northampton.
Oh, it's not a writing group. We're just a bunch of people who meet in the pub.
We're just a bunch of people who meet in a pub. We just occasionally just go to
Write some stuff as well.
Yeah.
No, we're just there turned out to be quite a handful of us around Cambridge. Sort of, Ian's a little bit out, and Eric was in the area, and I'm there, and Chris Beckett's in Cambridge as well. So every so often we go, oh, we should meet at the pub, and then we take kind of 2 weeks by email going, no, I can't do that Tuesday, no, I can't do that Wednesday, okay. And then eventually we get a kind of evening where we just meet at the pub. So there's a handful of us. Some friends who run a really good podcast, the Time for Cake and Ale.
Oh, Becky and Ethan.
Yeah.
Hi, Becky and Ethan. Hello.
I interviewed them
Plugging
during,
your
Yeah.
podcast.
during Easter
We've got a recording of it, yeah.
Yeah, they're
They
fantastic.
interviewed me for their podcast.
They interviewed me for their podcast.
They haven't interviewed me.
Interview her for the podcast.
Have you? I don't think they have. but yes, we're all sort of in Cambridge, so we kind of meet every so often and kind of go, oh, what are you watching on telly? I'm watching this rubbish. Oh, what have you read? I've been reading this rubbish. But yeah, so it's not a writer's group.
Also, writers group. Now, this sounds very, very social. I like the idea of that.
Yeah, as social as, a handful of kind of introverted geeks. Yes.
Wow. As I say,
Pretty
I'm
social. Yeah.
part of an actual writers group, so as put as that.
Yeah.
I've been advised by Ian that you and your partner are quite foodies.
Oh right, yes, okay, yeah, we are.
And he said he's got a specific question for you. He said, how have you pursued this, and how are you surviving now that the Alimentum in Cambridge, I suppose, which is a Michelin star restaurant that lost its star?
My other half in particular is a really big foodie, sort of loves really good food, and we lived next to a Michelin restaurant, which we absolutely love. We're surviving, we're getting by, because we've got a small child at the moment, so dining out experience.
I like that at the moment, like.
Well, we do have pictures of her, sort of 2 months old, in the restaurant at Alimentum, kind of. But they stop being. You can take them out when they're kind of that size. Yeah. But then they kind of get a bit bigger, and they need bedtime and things. So you don't get to go out so much. So, but she's pretty good. She's good about going. She had a period of liking fine dining, but now it's much more kind of Five Guys. So we like to advertise burgers and chips at the moment. So we
I'm one of those. It's like. I forgot my bacon.
Oh no good.
It's no good with the bacon. That's a very Doctor Who name. Your daughter, Verity.
Yes, yes it is. Yes.
She's quite big now. I've seen pictures of her holding your book. Does she be reading your book?
Yeah, she's coming up for 5.5, so she's just. She's quite excited about my books. It's really nice. She's sort of really, really thrilled about them. So I hope that lasts. She's mad about Jodie. In fact, everybody at her school is sort of mad about Jodie Whittaker. So the kids from about 5, 6, 7, 8 love this version of the show. They love this Doctor. I know. I think some people sort of complain the storytelling's a bit slower. But she loves it because she's following the stories. And then we showed her the Ark in Space, which is a Tom Baker one with the it's got bubble wrap monsters in it. So So it's absolutely brilliant. So we showed her that because there was a Jodie episode with bubble wrap monsters, and we said, well, you know, that happened in the past. And we showed her that lo and behold, the storytelling is quite leisurely, and she can follow it and keep up with it. And she was sort of saying, oh, what's just happened and checking in on things, but she absolutely loved it. So all of the kids at her school, and going up a little bit older to right to sort of key stage 1, are loving Doctor Who. And of course, if you get them at 5, 6, 7, 8, you've got them for life. So it's very, they know what they're doing. Yeah.
The thing I must admit, I did eschew the novels to begin with, in favour of rent-a-ghost ones, which are right next door in the library.
Makes sense.
But yeah, I tried to read them eventually.
Oh yeah, well, I think a lot of us sort of learned to read on Terence Dicks novels, those kind of Doctor Who novelisations. Yeah, very important. I have a very distinct memory of sitting there's a shelf of them, and I'm sitting cross-legged in front, reading from there to there to there. And I thought I'd get to write one, so brilliant.
Yeah. So you actually started writing in the Jodie Whittaker sort of.
Yes, yeah. That's my last one, was a Jodie Whittaker novel, so that was already good fun. That was really exciting. Oh, look, it's a woman. She's the Doctor. I can't believe it's happened. I've lived to see it. Yeah, so that was my last Doctor Who novel, was a Jodie Whittaker. And I blanked on the title of it. Molten Hearts, that's it. Yeah, thank you.
I know it's hot.
Yeah, I know, they all blur.
It's lovely golden colour.
I was very pleased with it. Yeah, it was good fun. Yeah, it was you're quite anxious to get it right, and there wasn't much material available, so you're winging it with a little bit with the companions. I think it's easy to get Jodie's voice, and it's easy to get Bradley Walsh's, because obviously you could watch their stuff, but the other companions, it was a little bit trickier. So the trick is to go to their point of view and kind of just do it as third person limited. So yeah, I hope it will do. Yeah.
Oh, so right, you've got novellas out. So new con, bless Ian's heart. The greatest story ever told.
Yeah, Ian's been very good to me. Yeah, I thought. So I thought, what can I call the story? I'll call it The Greatest Story Ever Told. And it's he did a quartet of novellas set on Mars, commissioned 4 writers. So Eric is one of them, Liz Williams, and Jane Fenn, I think is the other one. And I thought, well, I'm not going to go for realism, I'm not going to worry about terraforming and that sort of stuff. So I just took Mars as a kind of imaginary space that I could play with. And it's basically a retelling of the Spartacus story. I think that's pretty clear from quite early on. So it's a retelling of the Spartacus rebellion on Mars, or as my colleague and good friend Helen Marshall said, Marticus.
I love that.
Yes,
that's one.
That's basically it. So. Yeah, it's quite sweary. He had to take out. He was going out. Let's take some of these swear words out. All right.
You dropped some C-bombs.
Did I?
Did you?
I don't know. I can't remember. Probably. I don't know. It's meant to be a bit. Yeah.
I don't know what it is with people who write for Doctor Who. Paul Cornell, very very sweary in his books. Very sweary.
Well, I know it's terrible. So which I felt a bit bad. A friend of mine sort of got it on audio and then started it in the car with her kids in the back. They kind of all leapt to stop it straight away. And it comes out with quite a barrage of swear words. So it's a bit like the start of 4 Weddings and a Funeral, only on Mars and about rebelling slaves. Slightly different. And then it had this. Oh God! It's one of my most beautiful covers. He commissioned such incredible covers. It was the most beautiful piece of art, which I'd love to lay my hands on. These quartets that he's doing, they all build up to a wonderful picture. But I was just delighted with mine. It absolutely got what I thought the story was about. So it's sort of a retelling of its Marticus, and then it's interspersed with kind of like folk tales and folk legends. So it was, I'm pleased with how it came out. And then I've got a novella coming out in May from Tor.com called The Undefeated. Which what was my pitch? I pitched it. It was Marco Palvieri, who was the guy who gave me my first commission for a Star Trek book, and we swore as well when he moved to be an editor at all. We swore we'd work together, and then I had a baby, and I was very busy doing various other things. I said, "Come on, we've got to work together. Pitch something to me." And as a joke on Twitter, I pitched feminist high plains drifter in space. And he said, "Yeah, I'm buying." Right? go and write me an outline. So I wrote an outline. Things drift from that. But that's basically what it is. Feminist high plains drifter in space. So, but that's coming out in a few. That's really soon now. That's about 4 weeks.
Next month?
Yeah, middle of May. I think it's got the most gorgeous cover. Really lovely kind of piece of Caspar Friedrich art redone as a piece of sort of science fiction. It's lovely.
And that's Tor.
That's Tor.com.
Yeah, they do some good, really good stuff, don't they?
Yeah, and me.
They do. They're always really successful with
I hope so. I'm really pleased. It's nice. I think if you've had a reputation for doing something like tie-ins, then to sort of people start to notice you and stuff. You go, actually, this is something I made up. Don't hate it. So I hope it's okay. I was rereading it the other day and I was like, oh, this isn't bad. Oh, you're not bad, are you? So I'm really pleased. Yeah, it's all right. It's okay. I'm pleased.
Cool. So also we're here at the Fairport Convention. Apparently.
Oh, that's a very Ian Waits question. Yeah.
Ian, only a huge prog rock fan.
Ian, you must get back. We could be seen here talking about folk and restaurants. But and he. Yes, one of the few short stories I did, which, as I say, I always do for Ian. I did a short story called "The Great Gig in the Sky," which is set in Cambridge, and it's about a folk band, but one of them has died, and they're all kind of grieving him, and then his ghost comes back and wants to play in the band. They see their own tribute band and realise that the tribute band is made up of people who are like Paganini, so it's all ghosts, but with their dead bassist in the band.
Is that one?
Of course, their tribute band are much better than them. their tribute band of ghosts. So Ian commissioned that. I was in. I can't remember. I think he did ages ago. It was. I think it was called Subterfuges. And Subterfuges. Yeah, it came out really well. And it was completely inadvertent. It was like I was just pressing all of Ian's buttons. I was kind of going, it's about folk. I've got there's references to the Swarms, and it was like I'd sat down and designed a story to get commissioned by Ian Waits, and in fact I hadn't. So I'd sat down and come up with a story about things I really enjoyed. It's very Cambridge set, but not in university in the town. So if you know that bit of town. Bits of town, you sort of know it quite well. But yes, it was kind of guaranteed commission over Ian by chance. It's a nice story. Yeah, it's a good one. Nice little ghost story.
Oh, that's it. New York Times best-selling author.
Oh yeah, did we not mention that?
I haven't mentioned that. The New York Times best-selling author.
I have a colleague who, with my day job, I work at university. And we always find a way of mentioning it in conversations to each other. Do I mention I'm New York Times? Yes, I think you may have mentioned that. Yes, I'm a New York Times best-selling author. Like my editor said.
NYT.
No.
NYT.
Well, it was for one of my Deep Space Nine books. It was part of a 5-book series we did of 5 authors, and we all did this sort of spin-off series, which we call Star Trek: The Fall. And the reason it's called Star Trek: The Fall is that 2 out of the 5 authors were British. And when the editor emailed, she said, this is the Fall series. And we thought she meant this is the title of it. In fact, she said, these are the books due to come out in autumn. So, yeah, true stories. That's how we ended up with the Fall series. Oh, okay, well, that's as good a story as any. But we had lots of fun. There were sort of 5 as me and Jim Swallow that I mentioned, and then 3 brilliant writers. Let me make sure I'm not forgetting. We had David R. George III, and then my lovely friends Dave Ward and Dave Mack. And we just had a blast. We had to make these 5, they're all set across about 60 days. There's a big event that kind of, shapes the story. And we were there with our little spreadsheets and going, oh no, this doesn't work, this. And then my book is, I absolutely love writing that book. It's the book I wrote just before I had Verity, before I got pregnant. It's finally where I get Captain Jean-Luc Picard to Cardassia, and he meets Garrick, who those who watch Deep Space Nine will know as the kind of assassin and torturer and sly guy of Star Trek. So it was I had an absolute blast writing it, and then for it to be the one that hit the bestseller list was sort of I'm really pleased with that. My editor said it's like an Oscar, can't take that away from you now. I said New York Times bestseller. Doctor New York Times bestseller. So it's lovely. It's that's it now.
So it's letters after your name, NYTBSN.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a really good PhD.
Yeah, that's it. Oh yeah, because you've got loads. You've got loads. I've been looking at this. It's very clever. BA in history, social and political science.
Yeah.
MSc in psychology.
Yeah.
PhD in sociology.
Yeah. Jack of all trades. I think.
That must take a load of work.
Yeah, quite a bit of money. Yeah, it kept me busy till I was about 30 something. I thought I probably need to make some money now, don't I? Rather than just exist in poverty. And so I became an academic. Yeah, so that was my mistake. Yeah, well, it kept me off the streets, I think. And then I was, as I say, I was sort of not working on my PhD in writing deep space time novels instead. So it's far better use of my time.
So I've got an MA and a yellow swimming badge. That's okay.
Yeah, I got my learner's swimming certificate. That's the best I managed. I got that the week before I left for secondary school. I got my learner's swimming certificate. It's genuinely the certificate I'm most proud of, I think.
It took like several years to get my yellow.
I never reached the dizzy heights of yellow. I'm still at learners, but I'm very proud of it.
So you also in your day job you're working at Anglia Ruskin University.
I do indeed, yeah.
And this sounds very impressive. This is very impressive. Not this sounds, but this is very impressive language. Co-director for the Anglia Ruskin University Centre for Science Fiction and Fantasy.
That's right. We love a title. Academics love a title.
This is organising things. This is loads of stuff.
What happens is, if you're a co-director, what happens is there is somebody who is the director, which in this case is the phenomenally talented Dr. Helen Marshall, whose new novel, The Migration, you should all be reading. And she's the director. She does all the work. And then I get to swan in every so often and go, oh, I've got an idea. Does somebody... Because I'm merely the co-director. The centre is Helen's creation, and she's been the driving force behind it. I've been very, very lucky to be with a set of people and to have a colleague like Helen who's just really good at getting things done. So that when I do rock up and say, oh, I've got quite a good idea, she'll go, great, well, this is where it'll fit in our schedule, and here's this kind of infrastructure support you need, and I'll try and get some money to, pass around a bag of crisps or whatever. So yes, we've had a lot of fun. Organising lectures. Helen set up a master's degree in science fiction and fantasy as well. So if people are interested in doing a master's in science fiction and fantasy, it's a distance learning course, so you don't have to.
As my pocket is meowing.
Pocket meowing. Do you have a secret?
I've got it on because people ask me questions. Who is meowing? Oh, flipping heck.
So cute.
When it says private number, it's the BBC. I'm going to have to let them go. Oh dear. Sorry.
Oh, so
sorry.
you were just about to be commissioned for a full part.
It's normally the BBC.
Oh, it always happens. Yes, so the sentence. So,
running creative writing.
Yeah. There's a creative writing masters at Anglia as well, and we've got several PhD students as well doing creative writing PhDs, and I've taught creative writing there for a long time. Yeah, about coming up for 10 years. I've taught creative writing there. It's good fun. Yeah, it's not stopped me writing, which I think often happens if you teach something. It stops you doing something, but it hasn't. It's only ever worked as a kind of aid.
Spotted any talent out there?
There is a lot of talent out there, yeah, some very, very talented people. I'm an external examiner as well for the creative writing degree at Edge Hill, which is probably one of the best creative writing degrees in the country. And it's fantastic students who's just come through there who won the Big Finish run a competition to get your story commissioned and broadcast. Lovely Harry Draper won that. So it was there's lots of treats of seeing students go through and kind of get on to successes. We've had a poet at Anglia Ruskin won the Bridport Prize. We've had a short story writer win Costa Short Story Prize as well, Caroline Ward-Vine. So I think there are big creative writing departments in Britain at like UEA and things, and we're quite small and there's not many of us, but we do really well. We've got really good students. Yeah, and fantastic teachers. Obviously, amazing teachers.
I was like, oh, we're coming up to 8 o'clock as well, which means it's question time.
Ooh.
So, as I have the phone out, I will ask the questions on my phone first, then we'll come out to the floor, because these guys are really, really quick. Seriously. Right. Ooh. So TJB just says, I'm a Uni McCormack fan with many questions, but we'd just like to take this opportunity to say thank you.
Oh, that's Timbuktu, isn't it? Thank you.
Yes.
Because his pictures cheer me right up. His tweets cheer me right up.
That's brilliant.
It's a lonely life writing.
John Arnold is a question in 2 parts, but I'll find his first part.
First part's a comment.
Oh yeah, because I did some joke questions, because I said Picard or Cisco.
Right, okay.
And someone's come back and said no, Picard versus Kerr Avon.
Right,
who would win?
Right,
This is the battle.
Right, okay, well, Kerr Avon never wins anything. So it's obviously Picard would win. Or Avon would think he was winning right until the last minute when Picard would turn it round and then talk to camera about the moral. So it might not be who you'd want to win, but Picard would win. Because Avon doesn't win. He loses repeatedly.
He has a good voice. Oh, they both have good voices.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Best voices.
Yeah, you won't kick either of them out.
And what is the method for settling the differences? I think that was in relation to that question. How would you settle the differences?
I think Picard would talk until Avon just surrendered. He'd kind of lecture him until he caved. And Avon would try to shoot him, but it would backfire badly.
And Alex from Trekworld said, any DS9 book coming?
Not that I know of. I've got one in my head, but so if they'd like to commission me, I'd love to write it. So it's all fully formed.
I'm not sure about the seriousness of this question. My sister's Dr. Monkhouse asks, what is Tilly's mother's surname? That's like a quiz question.
What is Tilly mother? And off the top of my head, I can't remember. So I need those wiki sites. Is what I need.
You probably are one. That's why I said I'm pretty sure there's wiki people on here. Yes, that is it from those questions.
Oh,
so some from the floor. Hi.
Hello.
Hello. So what's it like having number 1 named after you?
It's completely brilliant. Oh, it's absolutely great. Yes, I couldn't believe it. So number 1 from Star Trek got named on Discovery the other night, and right, okay. It's not a spoiler. Yeah,
I'm joking. Yeah.
She'd been named in the book by a couple of my friends. So I mentioned David and a couple of the writers. And given her my name, Una, for Una number 1. And it's made it to screen, and it's really exciting. So, hey, me, I'm canon. Yes, it's brilliant.
Do you find it easier writing for Jodie, the new Doctor Who, because the canon is not yet full, as opposed to the older Doctors, where the canon is so overloaded? You know, there's 100 books on Troughton or whatever.
Paul Cornell said a very wise thing once, which is that Doctor Who has no canon. So I think you sort of...
He keeps going back through his own timeline. He can't have a canon.
Yeah, I think Doctor Who works best when you're not thinking of it in terms of... So when you sit down as a writer and you're thinking of a story, you're trying to find a space where that story can exist. And sometimes that story exists from meshing together very tight timelines. You find a brain of story there. But Doctor Who works best, and this was Russell T Davies's genius when he rebooted the show, saying, let's ignore all of that. Just find the big space where story can exist. Yeah. And the best Doctor Who stories have a madman in a box with someone that he can explain the plot to. And that's how Doctor Who works best. So when I write Doctor Who, I never think about what else is happening, because you've got to find the space for your story, and that means finding the characters on the ground that made that story live. So it's always to do really with inventing a new setting. I think that's when Doctor Who works best. But then there are some people who are really clever at making all the complex stuff work. But yeah, so there's a spin-off range called Gallifrey, which is set on Gallifrey, and that has quite complex storylines. It's very tightly tied to those stories.
Gallifrey has its own.
Exactly that. Yeah. But Doctor Who, you need Time Lord, time. You don't need that. You need time and space traveller, TARDIS, companion. That's Doctor Who. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, so kind of following up on that, so you mentioned before that, you know, it's like historical fiction that you have to find a niche, or you don't violate historical canon. So you said that it's hard to violate canon with Doctor Who, so maybe more with Star Trek. But how do you actually decide where where do you have the freedom to improvise, and where do you feel like you're constrained? And do people ever come back and say you can't do that because it violates this one obscure episode that nobody's ever seen, or like if people constrain what you feel like you can actually
I do feel a bit more nervous with Star Trek because I don't know it as well, and it is so very complicated now. But the editorial team really know their stuff. They're just on top of it. So when you do books like these, you always write an outline before you get down to writing a novel. So anything like that, the editorial team will kind of go, oh, actually, you probably want to rethink this because we don't have this kind of technology, or in this episode it's established that we can't have that. So you kind of iron that out. But most of my Star Trek books have been Deep Space Nine books, but they've also been set, so I don't know how well you know Deep Space Nine. There's a world called Cardassia, and I've sort of centred all my books. It's a world that's slightly off-centre, but very present in Deep Space Nine. So I've set most of my stuff there, and I've pretty much had free reign. I've established stuff because it's not, it's present in the show, but it's not well documented.
Is that why you chose?
Not just that. I was writing fan fiction there, and partly what you do when you're a fan fiction writer is find spaces and gaps. So I think I was drawn there because the storytelling potential of how the stories about them moved me. But I was driven to write because there were gaps or inconsistencies or spaces where I could see I wanted to tell a story. And then, lucky me, people have given me money to do it, so which has just been brilliant. So that's how I've kind of done that with Star Trek. Does that kind of brilliant? Good question. Thank you.
Okay. All the questions seem to be from this side of the room. So, right, if you want to get in my eye line soon. Yeah.
If you were given free rein to do anything in any of the franchises that you write in, or the worlds you write in, what would you do?
So we're talking about things that I might write fan fiction in.
Yes.
I'd do something Tolkien related. I'd love to get my grubby hands on that Amazon show and do anything there. Quite frankly, I'd love to do a crime series, kind of noir series set on anything, kind of set on Cardassia.
Yeah.
Set in the Third Age and Minas Tirith or something. I don't mind. I'd love to do kind of, but I would love to do something Tolkien related. If we're talking about franchises that I would like to have worked in or have done something in, I'd love to have done some Firefly just because it was really good fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd give my eye teeth to do. What I'd love to do is, so I don't know how well, I'm sure you all know Tolkien incredibly well. I'd love to do something set on Numenor and do a story about that. And it'd be all industrialised and Art Deco. And, yeah.
Oh, that would be fun.
So that's my kind of techno Numenor is what I'd like to do. I should probably just do it as an original novel with the serial numbers filed on.
Tipex out.
Yeah, exactly.
Numenor.
No. Boominor. Not the works of J.R.R. Tolkien. But that's where my imagination falls, definitely.
Okay, so do we have any questions from this side of the room? This side of the room we're all satiated.
Come on, they're winning over here.
I think they will last time.
I have a quick question.
Go on.
Maybe Doctor Who, obviously there are script writers who are supposed to check when you submit a text that everybody follows, but presumably there might have been a case where you submitted a text as far as you were concerned, it was correct. So, and suddenly some obscure thing later, someone says, well, some obscure fan says, well, actually on this episode or wherever, that wasn't quite the case, where no one did their due diligence. Has that ever happened to you? It might not have happened to Doctor Who, it might happen to Trek, I don't know.
I think we had a cock up in a Trek book once, and you just have to go, we cocked up.
But you can't check every single micro fact. There's no way of doing that.
No, I mean, you do absolutely your best, but yeah, sometimes, you know, best within. We live in a fallen universe, don't we? So cock ups happen. So yeah, I think we cocked up a date once on the Star Trek novel, and that was a shame. And we just have to say yes, we probably didn't have that up right.
It's the bane of every writer who, you know, does his homework or homework.
Yeah,
the scriptwriter checks, and then someone picks up some obscure tiny thing years back and says, well, hang on, that couldn't be. And you say, no, we didn't.
But ideally, what you'd like to think is that it's generated, you know, 9,000 fix-it fanfics. Everything is an opportunity to kind of...
Didn't affect the sales of the book, that's the important thing.
I hope not. No. It was, I think we'd forward dated something a couple of years, and we should have pulled it back 18 months. Because the timelines are quite complex. You just hold your hand up to say, yeah, it got past us. So,
thank you.
But is that the kind of thing that would get corrected in a future publication of the book?
Possibly. They have quite a limited sort of... they're books that sell a lot as they're published, and then I think they have an actual... You need to be someone like Diane Wayne or Peter David, I think, is looking at multiple... Or Ian Shatner is looking at multiple print runs. So I am not of that kind of elevated sort of level, but it is, yeah, or it's the kind of thing you can go to a wiki site and discover that there's been a debate on a fan site, and then the editor come in and said, sorry, we started. So, yeah.
Hey, one more?
Do you still write fanfic, and is it under your own name?
Yeah, absolutely. I always wrote fan fiction under my own name. I wrote it under my own name from when I was 15, 16, 17. Partly naivety, but also it meant that when a man wanted to email me with a book contract, I was very easy to find. And I still write Tolkien fan fiction extensively. In fact, I was writing some on the train. So I do use a pen name for that, but the reason I used a pen name was because I had been writing very kind of bleak Blake 7 and Deep Space Nine kind of political psychodramas with loads of assassinations. And then when I started writing smooshy romance about Faramir and Eowyn, I was very embarrassed. So I started using a pen name for that. And then, but my pen name is kind of an open secret. My Tolkien pen name is Altariel, and that's what you'd find on AO3. So yeah, still write loads of fan fiction. I'm doing a paper about it at the Tolkien conference later in the year. Yeah. So
We have an online question.
I've got a question for the live stream.
Oh yeah.
Anne is watching from the States, and she's asked, have you ever invented technology for any writings of any TV things that had been accepted and then gone into the show as a regular piece of technology?
Oh, technology? Oh no, I'm terrible at that kind of thing. No, I'm still pleased that I can operate a VCR. So, and science fiction writers, I think, are really science fiction. It was funny, I was having this. I interviewed Jim Al-Khalili recently, and what he's got a science fiction book coming out. What his book is really good at is thinking what technology might be like in 5 years' time. And often science fiction isn't good at that. And the classic example I think of is in Deep Space Nine. They have these things called pads, which are kind of they look exactly like iPads. And you carry them around, and they've got loads of information on. But because they haven't thought that there might be such a thing as the internet, they have a separate pad for every single file. So they're literally carrying around stacks of things that we now have. So I would be the person who would not invent the internet, and I've never come up with the technology thing. Not that I can think of. I'd be amazed if I had, but not a technology, no.
Thank you.
No worries.
Thank you.
Okay, so any more questions? No. Well, we hope that. I think that's been a great talk. Great.
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you for standing in at the last minute. That was really good of you. Thank you.
So, that just behoves me to say thank you very much to Una McCormack. Thank you. That's it. We're off. We're offline.
Great. Take me away.